Welcome, everybody. Thank you in audio land and TV land for watching us on another episode today. My name is Mark.
I'm Lewis.
And I'm Mike.
And again, today we got a pretty good podcast today. We got a former Tesla manufacturing engineer who's going to come online and talk to us about his early Model S. It's a 2012, and it's kind of, what he said, 100 kilometers. Yeah, so
130,000 miles.
So we're definitely looking forward to hearing from that. We're also going to talk about a guide for the perfect safety score. There's a gentleman on the forums who has it all figured out. We'll talk about that. The NHTSA is also investigating a Model Y fire. What's that about? I'm sure a lot of us have heard about that. And we'll have also some behind-the-scenes information of the New York Times doc about Elon's crash course. JT's going to fill us in on a lot of stuff. So strap in, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 11 starts now. As always, my brothers from another mother, Lewis and Mike, these handsome gentlemen. How y'all doing? Y'all good?
We're doing
4-day weekend.
Good. I know. Well, for you, for these, not.
me.
But yeah, you guys got special plans happening?
Talking to you?
Top Gun, baby. Top Gun.
Anyway. Sorry. So we're here for something else. So guys, thank you for coming out to see us and hear us today. We have a special guest that I want to get right to right away. His name is JT Stukes. Is that right? JT Stukes?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Hey!
JT.
Welcome, JT.
JT, thanks for coming on today and hanging out with us, man, on this weekend. I appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, man, there's a lot that you could bring to the table here, and a lot of people hopefully out there will be able to ask questions, and feel free. People who are watching us, probably I think Twitch too, but for YouTube, definitely put some questions down for JT, because JT, he knows some stuff. He knows where the biters are buried, let me tell you. So, JT, if you can, my friend, introduce yourself to everyone listening and watching, and tell us a little bit about you and how you got into Tesla.
Yeah. So I started working for Tesla as a manufacturing engineering. I worked in material handling group, but I started in 2014 and I left in 2018. And I did lots of mechanical engineering, mostly for moving parts around the plant.
Can you kind of tell us what that is, kind of just?
Yeah. So, for instance, Tesla makes drive units in the facility, and they make rotors, they make the stators, they make what are the rotor stator and I don't know. They make rotors and stators and the inverters. Sorry, the electronic parts. And those are lines in the facility, and they get finished, and then they need to all get assembled into a drive unit, into the motor, and they don't always end up at the same place. So I would do lots of projects that would bring the rotors, bring the parts to where they would need to be next in the plant. I also did sort of parts where the battery enclosures are made of aluminum. They have lots of steel parts in them. You have to get galvanic corrosion if you don't properly treat those parts. So the aluminum enclosure would get coated, e-coated in paint, but it would have to get put on a paint rack and taken off the paint rack. And so I would do projects like that as well.
So you're involved with an overview of managing all those processes that actually take place to make all those things work.
Yeah, so I did the actual engineering work to solve those processes. So I specified, designed equipment that would do that. And so I work with some of the people that would sort of develop the process. They were not necessarily me. I would have involvement. I would talk to them about that to make sure that what we were solving for was the process that they needed, or if I needed to change the process to make it more automation friendly, it would still solve what their need was. So, but I designed. So like I specified some robots. I specified some pick arms to move battery enclosures around. I designed e-coat racks, things like that.
So it's safe to say you were around when the Model 3 came about, right?
Yeah, so I started before Model X launch and worked heavily on that. And then I worked through conceptual phase of Model 3 all the way to really the start of heavy production of Model 3. It was June of 2018 when I left. So right when the Model 3s were starting to become available.
Was the production process of the Model 3, was it radically different from the X and the S prior? Did you have to do new ways of thinking to make that process work?
So yeah, originally the Model 3, we were going to build it traditional sort of auto manufacturer style. And then there were a lot more constraints that were decided to be put on us. Like we needed to fit inside the facility. We needed to use less space. And we needed to come up with a new sort of concept. And basically what that ended up being is we ended up elevating the manufacturing line above the floor. So we could move things
that was
underneath
cool.
it. We could move things underneath it. And that was one of the things that came up early on. There's a big debate over, do you want to move things above it or do you want to move things below it? And there's big discussions there. There's lots of other discussions about how would you compact the line. And a lot of that actually got pushed back to the design team to reduce complexity of the car build, right? If you have 1,000 parts versus 600 parts, 1,000 parts is going to take more space to assemble because you need to have those parts. You need to be able to have space to install them, things like that.
The Model 3, because Mike and myself, we own a Model 3. Lewis, he's getting his plaid, so
Yeah.
he's a little
not an owner
there.
yet.
He's not an owner yet. But a lot of people, the Model 3 was, in my opinion, kind of put Tesla out there because I was not even looking at Tesla until the Model 3 kind of came out because I couldn't afford the X or the S. But the Model 3 is really I think, a fantastic vehicle in a number of ways. So if you can tell us how much time, because I wanted to always know this too when I was waiting for my date to be or for my delivery date to come. Can you tell us like how long it would take a Model 3 to be built from, if you know, from like the stamping process to like VIN?
Yeah, so stamping is kind of separated from the building of the car. You build up like an inventory and you do big batches of stamping. You don't stamp, 2 sides and then you build the car after it. No, you stamp a week's worth of sides, right? Because you have to change all this tooling and die. There's a big overhead in changing the part over. So you do a lot of accumulation and stamping. So if you're going to talk stamping, it's plus 2 weeks to whatever I'd be able to tell you because it's on a cycle. You run like a 2-week cycle. Now you might stamp, body side rights 3 times during that cycle, but you stamp on a cycle and you maintain an inventory. But once the vehicle, once you decide that you're going to build the vehicle, you would start in body and white, and that's where you're welding the body together, the hang-ons to the doors and all the closures as well. From there, that's a relatively quick process. I wasn't heavily involved with Model 3 on that, but that's in the order of hours. It's not days or anything like that. It's in the order of probably 5 or 6 hours for when your vehicle's going to start at the beginning in the body and white and go to the end. It's a very, very quick process.
Wow.
It's almost entirely automated. There's people putting parts into fixtures and things like that, but robots are installing everything, and you've got a bunch of robots in there and they're just doing this choreographed dance. So everything goes well, right? There's no stoppages or anything like that. It's on the order of hours. And then after that, you have a car body and you have some doors and a trunk at that point. Right. And they're all raw steel iron, they're all raw steel. So then that vehicle will go into paint, the doors and closures. I can't remember for Model 3 if they take the doors and closures off and paint them separately or not. I think that they do. The doors might stay on and the trunk lid might be painted separately. But the vehicle goes in through paint. Paint is a little bit longer process, but the painting, so you dip it in a bunch of chemical baths. You do undercoating, which is e-coat, and a couple of things like that. You build up the thickness of your paint undercoat, and then you do the paint on top, which is what you see in whatever thinks about paint. But that's a little bit longer process. You're dipping the car, you're waiting for it to dry and drip and things like that. So I think that Model 3, I don't really remember. I don't say it's like 8 to 12 hours.
That's from start to
finish, and that involves like a little bit of cure time. So the paint is like touch safe, right? You're not going to want to rub on it or anything like that. It's not fully cured to that point, but it's enough to go through the line where you don't have, you wear covers on your watches and rings, and there's no metal on the assembly line. At least it's not supposed to be.
So so Lewis wants to know about the Plaid. So let's ask about the Plaid. You know about the Model S, right? So
I don't know.
So how long do those take in comparison? The Model S, typical Model S.
So back when I was there, it was about 6 hours, I want to say, for Model S body. Model X was longer. It was like probably about 9 hours, I want to say, the Model X line.
Because of the fancy doors, the gold doors that they had, more mechanical that had to be done. The
Model X was a much more complex assembly. Yeah, it also had a different underneath pan. It was a lot more. It also used nails and a couple other really cool fastening type things. But they took a long time. It was just a really long line. It was probably like 3 times longer than the Model S line in terms of like length and pitch count. It was really big. So the Model X, it was faster. Like the vehicles went through the line faster. It's just a lot longer. So I want to say there was about 9 hours. And then paint is basically the same for almost all of them. The paint time isn't a big.
No, when they do paint, and this is just curiosity, I would imagine they do it in batches. Like they say, okay, we've got 40 cars queued up, or 40 assemblies queued up. We want them all white, and we're just going to spray everything white, and then we're going to shift the color to blue or to black or whatever the next color scheme is. I can't imagine they just change colors dynamically.
So you can change colors dynamically.
Really?
So most of auto manufacturing has wanted that for a long time, and so it's very easy to change over color.
I like how he says it's very easy.
most of the, or it's a solved problem. Most of the paint, it's not paint like you would paint your wall or even really spray paint. It's electrically charged. It's wet. It's got wetness in there, so it's smooth when it is applied, but it doesn't. You don't spray it on. It's not wet like water.
It's
or anything like that.
is what you're saying.
You charge the car, and the paint is charged, and it gets pulled to the car. So think of it like a dust cloud. It's paint and it's wet, but think of it more like a dust cloud, and you're sucking the dust on there, and then what you do is you just blow out all the color, and you go to a new color. It's not a lot of mess or drip or anything like that.
Interesting.
Wow.
So actually, it hits the car and collects. It might drip a little bit, but the paint itself is just really, really tiny aerosolized particles that don't collect or smear or anything like that.
Okay, so on that note, because I'm actually curious, because it's been reading things that people post, and a lot of it's speculative. Yeah. So one of the things I've seen people claim is like, oh yeah, they do colors in batches. You're saying that you don't necessarily have to do that.
You don't need to do that. You will save a little bit of paint if you do 2 black cars back to back.
Okay.
If you do 2 black cars back to back, you don't have to purge out your line. It's a very small amount of paint. It's a small amount of cost. You also can't change over any color to any color. So you can't go from like red to white because you'll get a pink car. That's pretty common in lots of industrial processes, right? You can do lots of the changeovers. But what you can do is you can go from red to black, or red to gray, and then gray to white. So there's not unlimited switching, but you can switch between every car.
Gotcha. So
I know Tesla was doing maybe batches of like 6 to 10 cars. They would do a run of a handful of cars of the same color. And that's mostly a paint savings, cost savings type deal than anything else.
That makes sense. So what about things like, so this is weird. This is one that I didn't fully get. So the other ones I've read about are people saying like, oh, whether they're doing international cars or domestic cars. Some of that kind of makes sense, and there might be different components or things, and you can talk about that. But the one that puzzled me was wheels. There's a whole thing about people saying, oh, if you get 21-inch wheels versus 19-inch wheels, it'll change when you get your car because they do them in different batches. And the only thing I could think of for that is maybe supply chain, because I can't imagine that has any impact on running the line.
Yeah, I agree.
So I happen to know a lot about wheels, at least what the status was in 2018 for Model 3, and that is it's production planning. So when they decide what car to get built, they decide that after it's been painted. So like your car doesn't get a VIN number until it's after it's been painted. It doesn't get assigned to a person until after it's painted. I know they don't assign out VIN numbers. I don't think they do that the same way they used to. But when it goes to general assembly, when they would make that queue for general assembly, there was not enough time the wheels are assembled off site. So the tire rim is balanced off site and they're shipped to the site. that takes longer than the car gets to the wheels, which is one of the last stations in line. So what they would do is, because of, hey, we're going to, do VIN number 10, but when VIN number 10 has 21-inch wheels, they can't order the wheels at that point after they've already assigned the VIN. And that's production planning. That was, I was on wheels. It made my life really difficult for them to do that. I fought very hard for them to say, why don't we have a 12-hour queue before GA and we just solve the problem easily. We don't need 12 hours. We need like less, but that would make everything really easy. But that's the reason. And so there's the ability to have 2 different types of wheels get sequenced to the line, or at least when I left, there was the ability to have 2 different types of wheels sequenced to the line. There was a project where we would fix or be able to sequence in facility, but that I left with that, getting funding at that point.
Now, speaking of wheels, I just read where one of the major manufacturers, I want to say GM, but I'm probably wrong. A major manufacturer has stopped shipping wheels and tires with the vehicle. They've got these little donuts that they put them on strictly for shipping. The wheels and tires are actually installed at a receiving area after it's left the plant. And they say it's more cost effective and there's less risk to damage and theft doing it that way. And they actually ship the biscuits back to the assembly area to be reused. Have you heard of anything like that or seen it?
I haven't heard anything like that. I know wheel damage is a big thing, especially when you're driving through these sort of tight areas and logistics yards and driving on trailers and things like that. So I know that wheel damage is a big thing, and most people buy their fancy rims and they curb them like day 4 because they don't know how wide their car is.
I'm hoping not to do that. I have signature wheels coming, and I'm really hoping I don't ding them.
But that's a really easy thing to customize. It's really easy for basically anyone with a jack and a torque gun to do. I mean, the when they do it at the facility, you get guaranteed amounts of torque, and it's a better in assembly. But the wheels are designed to go on and off really easily by almost anyone. I mean, on the side of the road, I have a hydraulic jack and tire iron. And
so JT, so when they
swap a tire out.
So when Tesla showed us the Model 3 at the reveal, they had the Uber teens on there, and so. Is there a reason why, if you can say, why those never made it to the first batches of Model 3s and it didn't come till later? Was there a reason?
So they had the what?
The Uber teens, the Uber teen wheels, the ones that they showed were not the ones that were on the cars when they first released, but they came later because I have them now. So is there a reason why they didn't do the Uber that type of wheel design?
So that was planned. I was planned a long time out. So there were a huge collection of tire rim combinations. European tires are different than American tires. They don't do the low rolling resistance the same way we do. They have much softer, stickier tires as their sort of base tires. But the wheel tire, I don't really know why. But the original, it was planned for quite some time to have the 2 wheels, the black wheels with the wheel covers, which look way better without the wheel covers, and then the silver 19-inch wheels. That was the plan for a long time with no tire choice. I happen to know that the only reason why performance tires got pushed to the front of the line was because Elon tweeted it, and I heard about it like 4 hours later. It's like, JT, we have to sequence 3 tires to the line now. I'm like, well, I designed for those 2. And then we have the project to do all the rest of them later when we add European production, which was the original plan.
Okay.
But I don't know why. I don't know why, but I can tell you that was planned.
Okay.
There's planned to have the 18 and the 19-inch wheels, the black 18 inches, and then the 19-inch, whatever the fan blade ones, which...
And Tesla, because I'm ignorant on this. Do Tesla make their own wheels, or do they have a third party that makes their wheels?
They buy them from a supplier. Yeah.
Okay.
So Tesla's involved in the design of those wheels, so the aesthetics of them, but not the fabrication or anything like that. Yeah.
And some of the wheel. So I guess Tesla also would talk to the manufacturer about making them more EV friendly, more to save on your battery charge. I guess to make them more.
Yeah. So like anything in the automotive industry, Tesla's going to specify a wheel, and they're going to give a lot of specifications. You know, mass, inertia, moment inertia, all this stuff, and they're going to give them and they're going to talk to suppliers and going to find out who can give them as close to what they want as possible. But Tesla's not in charge of, you know, manufacturing them or, you know, determining the manufacturing process or the QC process of that. They're just giving a spec to a vendor, and it's a very detailed spec, and then getting the wheels they want back.
Random question: what's your thoughts about the Cybertruck?
I'd rather have an F-150.
Just you know what? Everybody has, you know. When I ask that question to guests, they say, "Oh, I got an F-150."
Yeah.
So like
I'd rather a Rivian.
Well,
so no reservation for you, I guess.
No reservation. Like the F-150 has like a usable trunk. It's practical. If I'm gonna get a pickup truck, I'm going to use it for something. I'm not a pickup truck person. I have a sedan and a hatchback. My next car might be a minivan, but no. If I want a truck, I want a truck with a real bed. I want a truck with, you know, not a glass roof. Truck. Like if I have conduit, like I'm gonna go. I bought a new house 3 weeks ago. I'm installing conduit to install my charger. I gotta buy like three 10-foot sticks of EMT. I'm gonna put them on my car. I don't want glass. I don't want glass to be the top part of my car, my pickup truck, when I'm, you know, carrying something that's long.
Fair enough.
So I just installed my charger a few weeks ago, and I was just like, man, how am I gonna get this EMT? I guess I could, and you know, whatever. I ended up getting flexible conduit. That's what I ended up doing.
So I yeah. I was able to get 8-foot EMT sticks when I did my last install, and it worked great. Got it for free too.
Oh my gosh!
I know some electricians.
I used to be an electrician.
Okay. I worked with a bunch of electricians back when I had when I got my car originally in 2012, and they're like, we don't use this 1-inch EMT anymore. You can have it.
Nice. JT's reading my mind, because I was going to ask him about his fancy Model S. So you got one of the OG Model S's. So can you tell us? It has over 100,000 miles.
Yeah, got like 135,000 miles on it. Yeah.
So can you tell us the viewers and listeners, like, what things had you had go wrong with it?
What are some of the challenges in maintaining?
Yeah, exactly.
An older Tesla.
Yeah. So really early on, I drove off a curb.
Ouch.
And I had a big insurance scare. So this is like March of 2013. I had a big insurance scare. The insurance was like, well, you need a new battery. It's dented. Oh. Tesla's like, no, you don't. It's this rail. It's not actually part of the battery. It's designed to. And I didn't have my car because the insurance company's like, oh, we're going to total it. I'm like, I drove off a 4-inch curb.
And you're going to
like straight. It was just a parking lot, and it just had a 4-inch drop off. Like the sun, like I couldn't see it. Whatever. I dropped it. I just didn't. Anyway, it was really challenging. So I had challenges early on. But there's a lot of weird stuff about it. Like I changed my low voltage battery a couple weeks ago. I ended up paying Tesla to do it because it's like a 2.5-hour process, because it's really hard to get to. You have to take off all of your front trim. You kind of have to pull back the tub a little bit. You can kind of get there, but you're reaching around. It's not designed to be taken out. It's a really hard part. And when Tesla quoted it, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have to charge you $20 to install it." I'm like, "I have a 2012 Model S." They're like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be like $70 to install it," because it just takes that long. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that. You know, the door handles back then are a little tricky. That's one of the things I was really conscious of when I bought it. It's like I still think the Model S door handles the way it's self-present. It's like the coolest thing in the world. Every time I walk into the car, I still love it. Yep. Like I've had the car for over 8 years or 9 years now. And like I walk up to the car, the door handles come out. It's like the greatest thing. But I knew that they're not going to be the most reliable things ever. I had like 2 or 3 recalls of them. I can't remember how many times Tesla replaced them, but I still have the ones with the LED lit lights underneath them. So I didn't get the ones they're using now. But I had one break, and Tesla's like, oh, we want $900 whatever for one door handle, and I'm like, well, so it's just the switch, it's the micro switch, it's like a $10 part, but it's not a standard micro switch, so it's like a $40 part.
Still, that's better than
the wire entry is different, and it only works for Tesla because Tesla, custom. They specified this micro switch instead of buying a standard one. They specified one, and you can't. It's hard to get a replacement part for it. So there's a couple people that make them. Whatever. I ordered one off the internet because Tesla wanted like $300 for a micro switch. It wasn't $300. It was an incredible amount of money for a micro switch. I got them for like $70 or something like that. I got a full set. You have to take the door handle out. You got to reach around the glass. It was difficult, but it's you have to learn how to do things yourself. You have to be ready to pay. Have you
had any other major issues like with the drive motors or anything like that?
So I'm on battery 2. First battery. The first battery had the contactors seize. I don't know if they were seized open or shut. I really don't know. But they just completely disables the car. The car won't do anything at that point. So my wife was stranded in a parking lot in PetSmart. When that happened.
That's not good.
So they opened up the battery and they replaced the non-serviceable part of the battery. They opened it up, and this is all under warranty. But they opened it up. They replaced all the contactors. About 3 years later, I think the same thing happened again. Tesla never really told me what happened, even though I was working there at the time. But I got a brand new. But yeah, I got a brand new battery. So that was about 70,000 miles ago, 60,000 miles ago. I got a brand new battery. So my battery was only like 4 or 5 years old. And then drive units, I've been through a bunch of drive units.
Really?
Drive units, I think I'm on drive unit 6. Yeah.
Ouch. Wow.
So the first one, I honestly think it was a manufacturing defect, but the whole gear reduction in the drive tray just disintegrated. It was marbles. I was just driving and I heard a chunk and I lost almost all power. And then I started hearing marbles and I lost all amount of power. So I'm just assuming that everything in there just disintegrated. I think it's probably manufacturing defect. And then got a new drive unit. And then those early drive units have this, I don't know, that's clunking, but you hear this thump when you go from acceleration to regen. So when you change the direction of force, and whenever you hear the tick, you call up Tesla and you say, "Hey, it's doing it again," and they'll give you a new one.
It's doing it again.
Wow.
But they give you a refurbished one that has the same problem. So I went through like 4 or 5 of those, a bunch of those. Some people, when you call maintenance, they know exactly what you're talking about. Some people have no idea, so you just have to call a couple. Back then, you could just call a couple times and talk to the right person. Like, oh yeah, we'll get you in. Just we'll order one. Just wait, keep your car. We'll tell you when to do it, and then they can do it in a day or 2.
Wow. When was the last time you had it replaced? How long ago was that?
The last time I had it replaced was 2017, late 2017, probably.
And
it might have been 2018. It might have been late 2018.
So despite all these issues, you still love the car? Still
like the car a lot.
Do you see yourself trading it in for something else, or are you just keeping it till it just disintegrates?
I'm gonna keep the car even after it breaks. I like it. It was a big part of my life. Like, is why I went to work for Tesla. I always wanted an electric car. I didn't think they'd really exist, and then the Model S came out, and I was like, well, I can.
That's what I was.
$50,000. I can afford that, and then $97,000 later.
See, now you've got Mark all wound up.
See, Mike and Lewis, the cool kids with the hair. No, we see. JT and I are on the same page because I was just going to ask him. Like, first off, he knew I was going to ask about his Model S.
That's a low blow, Mark. That's a low blow.
Now I was like, okay, JT, how did you get into EV? Like, what was about this whole Tesla thing? And he was like, well, I always wanted EV. So JT, tell us, what were you before Tesla? Before you knew what Tesla were, what were you doing up until that point? Were you always into electrical things, to EV cars as a little child or as a teenager? Did anything like that happen?
Since I was like 8 or 9 years old, I would tell my parents multiple times a week how many days it was until I was able to drive. So that's all I wanted to do from like a very, very young age. I got my permit on the day I turned 15. I got my driver's license the day after I turned 16 because I turned 16 on a Sunday. It was a disaster. I learned about that like 2 years before it happened. I'm like, is the DMV open on Sunday? Because this is going to be a problem for me. But no, I always wanted to drive. I was very STEM oriented in high school. I took, and I wanted to design cars. I was dead set on designing cars.
What was your first car? The first car you had?
The Dodge Neon, a 1996 Dodge Neon. Okay. That thing was terrible. But yeah, I drove it like a race car. I drove it at the limit for quite some time. The odometer broke on it, so it said 180 some thousand miles. I had like 250, 300 ish. It was a gem. It was white from the factory, and then it got stolen, and they crashed it into a bollard. And of all the insurance money, the only thing we spent on it was to undo the dent in the door because it didn't open and close anymore, and to paint it because the paint was wrecked. And my brother, we shared the car. My brother decided he wanted it black, and I was like, don't want it black because it's going to look like crap. Guess what it looked like? It looked like a reverse Dalmatian, so it was black with white spots everywhere. So we got the $300 paint job because we're like, let's pocket this insurance money.
That's right.
$300. What was that, Earl Scheib?
I was going to say Earl Scheib.
It was Electrobake. I don't know if that's like a chain or something. It was Electrobake, but they promised to do 3 coats.
3 whole coats
over 3 days. But my brother and I went to the Electrobake place, and we saw our white car like 6 hours before we got it. The next morning, we went and saw the Electrobake, and it was white. So they spray painted it and gave it to us like 2 hours later.
So I cut you off, and I'm sorry. I was just curious. So you in school you enjoyed designing cars. That was your thing. Once you got your license.
No, absolutely not. I went to college and I took a machine design class, and they tell you this is how you size a screw. And I'm like, nope, I don't have patience for this. So like in this class, you're like, they teach you for like a week. This is how you pick screw pitch and screw depth, and and I was like, but you just go to a catalog and you pick a screw.
Right, you pick a screw.
you pick a screw. There's a lot of reasons why you would want to pick one screw over another screw, right? You don't want 8 different lengths of screw if you can have 6 different lengths of screw, even if the screw cost is slightly higher. Getting it to the right spot and making sure you have all the right ones is better. And my professor in this class, he worked for Big 3. He designed cars. So he this was the class that I was so looking forward to. And I'm like, I don't have the patience for this. Mm-hmm. Designing a spring, designing a screw. It's like, no, you look at a catalog and you pick the right one, right? Like, I already knew that. And I was like, you pick the right one, right? We're not designing a spacecraft where, a gram makes a difference. Like, a gram makes a difference on a car because there's thousands of parts, but it's a kilogram. But you're not going to get a custom screw made. It costs too much. That's what automobile manufacturing is not about. So he tells us, and in the middle of the class, this is early on, but I'd already basically like, well, this is not what I thought it was. He tells me this story. He's like, yeah, I ran a team that designed a door hinge for GM, and we saved like, I don't know, 12 cents a part. I'm like, okay. We made it. They put it on like 12 models, and they're like, and then he tells us, and this is when I like fully grasped what the class was about. He's like, we put it on 12 models. They made like 4 million cars with this door hinge every year. So I don't know, it was 4 million. It was a huge amount of cars. There's million
12
cars.
12 cents per.
There's at least 4 per car, and you're like, whoa, that's 4 engineers full time on a door hinge for 3 years is perfectly financially justified.
Yeah.
Like that's the level of detail, and at that point, I have the ability to do that. Not what I'm interested in. And I got involved in manufacturing. I took a couple of classes in manufacturing where it's like, hey, we don't care. Put a big screw in there. We just don't want it to fall apart. I don't care that it costs 13 cents versus 12 cents because I'm building 4 of them, right? So I got into that, and I got into a bunch of continuous and chemical process work right after school.
So how did that get you into Tesla?
So my senior year, I took power electronics class, which you had to take these sort of combined. I was a mechanical engineer. You take electrical engineering, sort of combined classes. So you have a breadth of knowledge. You know what your adjacent units are doing, and we learned about what an inverter was and how you could do motor control. And I was like, this is a car transmission. This is way better than any car transmission that's ever been built. And I thought about it as a car transmission. I'm like, you're gonna have a small gen set, you're gonna have super capacitors, or maybe a battery. At that point, I was like, the batteries are probably not gonna work. You have super capacitors, which were, small amount of charge, but you have a gen set that's running at 20 kilowatts. You have super capacitors that can get you 0 to 60 in whenever you're 4 or 5 seconds, sports car level. That's not a lot of power. I mean, it is a lot of power, but speaking for driving long distances, what a car does, it's not a lot of power. You don't have to store a lot of energy. And your average consumption of a car is really low. But you have these accelerations, which are these big spikes, but they're very short. They're seconds, right? They're 4 or 5 seconds worth of acceleration. You never really accelerate long periods of time. So going over mountains and things like the i3 with the Rex i3 has issues with that as well, right? When it's low battery, right, has issues with high power draws. But that I didn't think about those issues when I was in high school and college. But I became obsessed with getting rid of a transmission in a car. And so I always wanted an electric car. I kind of saw Tesla in 2008 timeframe. I saw the Roadster.
The Roadster,
like, well, yeah. $130,000 car. I'll never own that. And but I would like Google Tesla, or, search them, every few months and just see what they were doing. And then I don't know, it was 2010, 11. They like announced the Model S, and then I want to say 2012, or maybe, sorry, the end of 2010 or maybe early 2011, they announced it's going to cost $50,000. I was like, whoa, I can afford a $50,000 car, especially I don't have to pay for gas. At that point, I was driving like almost 40,000 miles a year. My previous job, I was driving like 5,000 or 10,000 miles more, just commuting. I drove a long way to work. I was spending $300 a month in gas, $350, $400 at that time.
Wow.
And, I was like, well, I could easily afford an electric car with $50 grand.
Imagine what that'd be right now.
Exactly.
Well, that was post 2008, so that was like there's big spike in prices. They were $3 a gallon, I think, around that time frame. But and I had a diesel car for a large period of that, which was like it is now, way above a gasoline price. So I was feeling a little bit of that as well. But so I was like, but I drive a lot. I was driving 40,000 miles a year. So I took a log. I did 400 days. And I logged every mile that I drove for 400 days, every single day. And I noted if I could charge, at the end of the day or not. And there was only one day, that 400-day time frame, where I couldn't make it with 160 miles. 160 miles was my limit. I was looking at the Leaf. I just wanted an electric car at that point. I was looking at the Leaf because it was also out. The Leaf was 70 miles maybe. Yeah, and I was like, my commute is 60 miles, right? My commute is 60 miles. I can't do anything else but my commute. I was living in Georgia. A Leaf was a free car. You would get a state rebate, which was more than your total lease payments would be over 2 years. And that was what Lease was offering. So it was literally a free car. And I was like, well, I don't want a third car. I don't want to just commute in this car and then swap. I don't want to be forced to go home right directly to swap cars. I don't want to do that. A lot of people did. But I got the Model S. I thought it was great. I was going to buy the 40 kilowatt, and then I don't know. I was like, well, I could afford a lot more, and I couldn't really afford it, but I kind of made it work.
Was that your first EV? The Tesla, was that your first EV?
That was my first EV. Yeah.
The first one you ever drove?
Oh no. I had driven Model S before I bought it. And I had driven,
but no other manufacturer.
I'd driven a Leaf, I'd driven an IMEV, Mitsubishi, and I think those were really the only ones that were really available at that point. Especially, I lived in Georgia at the time, and outside of there was maybe a couple more in California, but those were the only ones that were available to me.
Interesting. So there's a topic because there's so many questions I can ask you, man. You're just a wealth of knowledge, but yeah. We got to stick to a plan here. So there was an issue with the Model Y fire that a lot of us out there listening and watching us here recall. And I've seen some mixed things about it. And maybe JT, you can tell us what you think about the Model Y. But what happened is this person, the car was smoking, and then they couldn't get out of the car. It was just the doors, like they didn't know that they could just.
Well, they lost all power.
Right, and they couldn't open the. They didn't know the manual.
There was a different way to open that door.
Yeah. So they ended up pushing
they kicked the windows out.
Yeah.
And
so, but they were trying to make it seem like the person was trapped and it was on fire, and we all know that well, not all of us, but I think it's kind of known that the battery, the car has a big battery under it, and we know that some of us know that lithium it can just spontaneously, it can when it combusts, it can go. So tell us your thoughts about the Model Y, because you mentioned you want to get a minivan, but would you get a Model Y versus a minivan? But tell us about your thoughts about it, and then tell us how safe do you think that the Tesla made the battery design to where we know lithium can be unstable, but are there protocols in the battery design to make it safer so that it gives you some time to get out before it just spontaneously combusts?
Yeah, so I don't know why you would get a Model Y. I think the Model 3 is a better car.
Well, I agree. I agree.
It's like, why not get a Model 3? The Model Y, not get a Model 3.
I agree, but there's people who think Model Y is the cat's pajamas. So
now I've hated SUVs and tall cars forever. So I'm very biased in that fact. But it just looks like a stretched Model 3. I don't like, maybe if you have 6-foot people in the back seat all the time, there's not a lot of headroom in Model 3. And I think I haven't been in a Model Y, but you could probably get a little bit more headroom in the back of that thing. But other than that, I mean, I know it's bigger. I've seen the inside, but I don't know. The Model 3 looks way better than me. I'm heavily biased.
It's funny.
If you ask me why you get a Ford Escape over a Focus when you could get a Focus, I would be like, I don't know why. The Focus is better. So same thing with the Civic and the CRV. I'd be like, get a Civic hatchback. Back when they had made Civic hatchbacks.
It definitely seems like a lot of people like the Y though. The Y,
there's
lots
a ton
of
them.
folks wave around it.
I see a ton of them. More. I mean, Model 3's been out way longer, and I see as many Model Ys, if not more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. But do you know anything about the overall battery tech and how Tesla manufacture the packs? Do they put some protocols and things to make them a little more safer to give you time to get out? Or
so, I don't know lots of details in the pack.
Right,
I know they've got lots of sensors. I know they got thermocouples in there. I know they're monitoring temperature and things like that. I know it's cooled. I think most of it is probably based on no defects in your manufacturing process, right? Making sure you don't damage a cell after it's put in, and then quality control on your cells. I think that's really going to be where most people are at. Obviously, GM had issues with design issue with their battery, right? They recalled all those bolts, but like you might, and Kia and Hyundai, Kia also recalled, I can't remember if it was the Niro or the Kona. They recalled a bunch of those as well, and they told people to park them outside. Yeah. But I think it's mostly going to be, I think most of those are probably gaps in their software to, do the proper maintenance of their cells, make sure they're not overheating or, doing whatever they're supposed to do when they're overheat. Gap there in either the software, the sensing. But I think mostly it's, at that point, I think really the quality of your battery is going to be down to cell quality and, after it's manufactured into a pack. And I don't know a lot of the details. I know almost everyone is cooling their batteries now, which makes them last way longer. Degradation goes way down. You have a little bit of, to help stop a runaway event, but I don't think anyone's cooling system is really going to stop that. But I don't know.
When it comes to fire, when it comes to fire, Mark, I would add that they do use special materials around the packs that are supposed to minimize, being fire retardant, things like that, to try to reduce the battery from actually catching on fire. But I mean,
Well,
there's only so much you can do there.
Right.
Yeah.
We're saying,
Once you get run away, there's not a lot you can do. You can hope the next one over doesn't go, and you
Right.
can kind of manage where the
Right.
energy and heat is going.
right. So we're looking at some of the video now. People who are listening, sorry you can't see it, but this is some of the video that was taken of the Model Y that we're talking about. And from my vantage point, it looks like something like the battery pack at the bottom. There's nothing going on up under there. To me, it looks like this started like maybe at the 12-volt battery, or maybe something. Maybe the guy had something inside the car or something like that. I mean, just from what I'm looking at.
so I want to point something out here, and you know me and being an engineer, and I like my details. So as far as I've been able to research, there's been 85 reported Tesla fires confirmed from the time they started making Teslas. 85. Last year alone, for vehicle fires, that's basically ICE, there's been 173,000 reported vehicle fires. That was just last year. The year before was 189,000 vehicle fires. So, when we talk about vehicle fires, it's not so much whether it's a pack or it's a gas car or whatever. You got to look at the overall number of what you're talking about. I mean, it's FUD, it's fear, uncertainty. People make this big deal about, oh my God, the battery's got lithium in it. Okay, you've got 22 gallons of a very volatile fuel behind you in a piece of tin or maybe plastic tank. That's not baffled.
It's not gonna matter how you store the energy. The amount of energy it takes to move a 2-ton, 3-ton car
it's a certain
astronomical.
That's
you're
right.
gonna have energy releases that are not planned, and you're gonna have
I like that. Not
massive
planned
fires,
energy release.
explosives. Yeah. Oh yeah. I worked in the chemical industry, and
I like
non-planned
that.
energy release is not a good thing.
So JT,
Yeah.
what do you think is why do you think Tesla is so ahead of everybody? What is it? Is it the battery technology? What do you think that Tesla have now that the other manufacturers are going to take a long time to catch up to? In your opinion, from working there with them?
Well, I kind of see everyone sort of converging to, like, all the early other manufacturers had these really big, really big prismatic or pouch cells, and Tesla had these really tiny laptop cells, and Tesla's getting bigger, and the other manufacturers are getting smaller. I think everyone's converging on to, they're going to converge on somewhere in between. I think everyone's sort of realizing that having 7,000 individual cells is a nightmare for a lot of reasons, and I think that these really big cells that if you have some issue with one of them, really degrades the whole pack itself. There's not a lot of it's a huge impact versus a smaller impact. It's still a large impact if one of those cells goes. And I think that's it. I also think that people are going to start looking at the higher voltage sort of systems, because you're going to save a lot of mass and cost in copper going to those systems. So I think that's where it's going to go. I think Tesla had the real advantage because they just committed to building these really big packs. And I think is when and they also understood the need to cool them, and they made a very sophisticated pack really early on. I think that's where Tesla really shined. I think it was a lot of foresight, more so than engineering knowledge. I think they wanted to engineer a very sophisticated large pack early on, and they did a lot of that work early on, and they've been able to build on that and use that going forward.
Interesting. So there's I think a lot of us know, if we saw the documentary that the New York Times did, you were a part of that documentary. And you had some things to say, and I think overall the documentary was okay. There's some things about it I didn't care for, but
if you'd like to hear more about that, listen to episode number 10.
But you've had direct knowledge with Tesla. You worked for them for a number of years, and you saw the manufacturing process. And so you also may have been privy to seeing some of the autopilot features, the radar versus LiDAR versus camera vision system. And so if you can tell us, what do you think? Do you think Tesla got it right by going the vision route? Because me personally, I agree with what Elon says, and that cameras are the better way to go. I just think that's just hot, But I'm not not like Lewis, who's a software guy who knows the ins and outs of these things. I'm just Joe Q Public who thinks that I think cameras make sense. So, if you can tell us a little bit about the documentary and your participation in it, if for those who hadn't seen it yet, I don't know why you haven't seen it. It's a great one, but if you can tell us some of the behind the scenes about it, and if you can, what your thoughts are to ask my questions about the camera versus LiDAR thing, what you think about that.
Yeah, so I don't know how familiar everyone is with documentary. I had like an hour's worth of video, maybe 45 minutes worth, an hour's worth of video total taken. It wasn't all quality, but I had over an hour's worth of video, and I was cut down to a couple minutes, right, in that thing. So I said a lot of stuff. I didn't really know what was going into the documentary. I think it was pretty fair. I think that it is simplified for the public. They didn't. One of the things which I talked about at length in my interviews was the iterations of autopilot, because AP1 and AP2 and whatever they're doing now, which is like AP7, if you actually start counting up what the changes they're doing,
sure,
they're all very different. They're all designed to do different things, and they were even explicitly advertised as doing different things. I don't like ADAS systems. I wouldn't want autopilot. I don't use adaptive cruise control. I don't even really use cruise control unless I'm going to drive for like more than one supercharger stop. So that's not my style of driving. I'm very attentive. I think those things, I lose attentiveness. I use cruise control for a couple minutes, right, to move my ankles around, things like that. But in terms of a main point of driving, no, I don't use them really. So they don't have a lot of appeal to me. So I'm very biased in that fact. But so I have two different thoughts on will cameras work. You can have high quality sensors. I'm talking LiDAR, lots of radar, high quality ultrasound, high quality cameras, and you can make those work. Or you can have a lot, which Tesla is not using. 8 cameras is not a lot of low quality sensors, and a lot of computing power to put that together to create a similar quality of sensing the world. I still think that there's huge gaps in sensing equipment to get a fully autonomous vehicle that's equivalent to a person in terms of adaptability. And I also have questions about, and I don't really know this, but about how much compute power that would require to put all those sensors together. That's the part I have a lot of doubt on. Like, I've got 2 eyes. They're infinitely better than any camera ever made. So, we're they're not on the same level, not even close to the same level. I also have ears, right? I use, you can hear a lot. Like I ride bicycles a lot. I don't know how many times I've yelled at a car to prevent them hitting me, right? And I know the Tesla can see everything all at once and, maybe not need that, but I've avoided being hit by a car more than 10 times by using something that Tesla cannot sense at all, right? In their autonomous driving. So I have deep questions about whether they're using the correct sensor set. I always have. I think that what they're doing with cameras is very good, but I wonder about the reliability of it and the edge cases. So like when you drive, most of it's easy, right? 80-90% of driving is pretty easy. And then the rest of it, most of it's not that hard, right? You have a couple of maybe not even seconds a month that are really truly difficult. That require lots of thought and effort and urgency, and that's the part that's just really hard to understand how an autonomous system is going to work. And if you think about it, there's a couple of seconds a month are 2 or 3 instances, but it's a couple of seconds. So I wonder about that, and I also have I run and cycle a lot. I have a lot of issue with no audible thing, and no one's using that I know of is using microphones and audible ultrasound, but audible inputs to listen for, say, like a train or a person or a horn or an ambulance. So, but I think if you want to go full camera, you need like 100, 200 cameras, low quality cameras. Wow. Right. I think you need that level of of quantity. And I don't know what the right number is, but that's the order that I would
more than 8 for sure. More than
8, right? But the problem is if you lose a camera on a Tesla, it's blind, right? It has massive blind spots. If it loses a single camera, any of the cameras, it's blind. So you need at least 16 to have quality, right? And then you start talking about some of the poor visibility spots of the Tesla, like directly in front of it, low cross traffic, out in front of the car, straight left, right at 90 degrees. Those are low quality, at least as far as I can tell. It has low quality there, and then behind it, the recorders, it has very limited vision as well. So I think you need to bolster that, and I think that most of your cameras are probably going to need to be like the front camera. You're going to have different focal lengths because you need to see, like if you're trying to cross, I cross, I turn left across a road 55 miles an hour speed limit. Like you need to see a long way away. And then when you're in a parking lot, you need to see really close to you. And I think that you probably need multiple cameras in a lot of those angles as well.
I know Lewis. Lewis can weigh in on what he thinks about this too, because he's a software guy, and he's got his plaid, and he's definitely he's on board with Autopilot. But Lewis can also shed us some light on what you think about, because Lewis thinks the doc was okay, but
I think it was certainly biased against Tesla for sure. It was clear that the producers think that Autopilot is, FSD and all that stuff has been too early, right? Like that it's too high of a risk. But there was accuracy in, obviously the accidents happened and some of the stuff they reported on. But no, I agree with a lot what JT said. What I would say is he's absolutely right. Different sensor quality is really what matters, and it's about the data that you're getting. I think that 8 cameras is not enough truly to be like you're not going to be level 5 with 8 cameras. Like you're out of your mind if you think that's even feasible. The thing to keep in mind is it's less about numbers of cameras and more about field of view, focal lengths, all those other types of things. And with different types of sensors, you can get pros and cons. Like I think the driving force is cost, right? No matter what manufacturing, it's usually cost. If LiDAR was free, would Tesla have LiDAR? Probably. Now, do I think
solid state LiDAR? Solid
state LiDAR. Agreed.
That's a maintenance nightmare.
Active LiDAR and all the other stuff is different. But do I think that do I think that it's capable of doing a lot right now? Yes, I definitely feel like the weakness is in the software. It is in the brain side of it than the sensor side of it. But do I think that they should add more robustness to their sensors? Absolutely. It does not necessarily have to be mixed mode. I mean, I agree. I think Sandy Munro made a comment about the auditory in one of his videos about how no car company is doing like audio, right? Like no one listens. There's no microphones going, hey, and that's kind of interesting, but I'd be interesting to see what people can do with that. But as far as sensors, I mean, infrared would be helpful in a lot of cases. More focal lengths, agreed completely. More angles of cameras. There's definitely blind spots, and you'd want to eliminate some of that. And right now, you really run the risk of a camera going out. If one camera goes out, your autopilot's not going to work. And it's just kind of like, ooh, that's, depending on the angle, right? Like as a person, I can move forward, I can move back. The B pillar doesn't move anywhere.
Right.
It only sees what it sees. So yeah, I agree with JT we need more sensors. And over time that may happen as they become cheaper. I think the bottleneck, why they aren't just throwing more sensors, is more the compute power. Because all that video has to be processed, and video processing is very expensive. And so if they double the number of cameras, even if they only had 16 instead of 8, it's not 100, but like, guess what? You need double the the processing power of a GPU. And that already some people are arguing is starting to be a bottleneck, with the performance of their infotainment systems and other types of things with autopilot and rendering and everything else. So it'd be interesting to see.
We got a question from a viewer, Don. Don, thanks for hanging out with us. And Don says, did the doc address Tesla's data showing Teslas with autopilot engaged crashes are about 10 times than the U.S. average? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Go for it, JT.
Yeah, so the doc put that out there, and your Tesla put out that information, and the I think it's NHTSA, also put it in their report. the problem with that data and the question that the doc brought up about it was that it's very low quality information that Tesla's pointing out there, saying it's safer. They don't talk about comparable vehicles, so that's old vehicles and trucks and things like that that have much higher crash rates. So they're not comparing it to new expensive cars, which is what a Tesla is, which are a lot closer. And then they don't talk about what miles are being driven versus on autopilot versus non-autopilot. They're not equal miles. A mile in a parking lot is much more difficult than a mile on a freeway. So they brought it up, and they sort of brought up a couple of those issues. Is that data it doesn't mean a lot if you look into it.
Yeah, I think my impression from the doc was the producers were pointing out that Elon used it as a marketing gimmick of, hey, look what NHTSA said about our safety, when it was actually not anything that the government investigated or found out. It was purely Tesla reporting that. So Tesla reported it, NHTSA put it in their report, and then Tesla went, hey, see, even the government found these things, and it's like, well, they didn't actually get those findings. So that was a little marketing spin, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and now that I remember it, I was actually used in a documentary on there, and I think my comment was something like, Tesla could have given whatever data they wanted because they have the data. If they wanted to give more clear data that it was a lot better, they probably would have. So they probably gave the best looking technical information they could get out, and that's what they gave out. That's what I would have done if I was a marketing person, right?
I mean, that's what every company will do. That
company, right? Every company's going to do that. And if you look at the specificities, it looks really good for Tesla, right? It's a very good marketing point, but it doesn't. It's not enough to say if they're actually better or not. If you actually look at the data, it doesn't know. It lends itself to say, yeah, Tesla's maybe a little bit better, but it's hard to tell. There's not enough information there.
Yeah, because was it all accidents? Was it just highway? Was it autopilot's only used under certain scenarios, right? So yeah, it's fair.
So okay, so let's bring up this other topic we have before our time runs, because I know JT, thanks a lot for hanging out with us with this stuff too, man. But the guide for the perfect safety score. Now I know JT mentioned that he's not doesn't too much care about getting the FSD beta, but I had it on my old Model 3. I sold it and got a new one, and so there's the only reason I got the first Model 3 is because there was a loophole where you could opt out of it and opt back in and zero it out. And so back when Tesla were allowing people, like on Fridays, they had like a schedule, like every Friday or something, they would bring new people in. I think 2 days before that, I enabled the beta part, and then I was able to drive, because that week I was working an early schedule for a show I was working on. So I was leaving my house at like 4 a.m. in the morning. Nobody was out, so I could drive there and back and with no problems. So that's how I got into the beta, because I spent 2 days driving like a grandma, and it worked. But there's a cat here that he just swears up and down that if you follow his directions, that you'll do it. And I have to really disagree that the thing that kills you in trying to get the FS, in trying to keep your score, is to follow too closely, because what's going to happen is you can be 2 car lengths in front of somebody, or whatever the car length you need to be, and then a car would get in front of you, because here in LA, 2 car lengths, you're telling the person, hey, come ahead and get in front of me. They don't respect
and
that.
They will. Rapidly.
And they will. And once you do that, now your follow distance is immediately bummed. And then if you want to ease off the pedal and let regen kick in, the safety score says, oh, this was a hard stop.
Excessive hard braking.
Yeah. So then right away you're done. I mean, that hurts you, and it takes you a while to get back up. So I think some of these tips, this cat, what's his name? Let me put him on blast. Let me put him on blast. His name is I forgot. I can't see his name.
Here comes the name calling.
It's coming.
I can't see his name on
it's
here.
Raul.
Rarel.
Rarel. Yeah,
we'll go with South Rural.
And he's okay. He's from South Bay, California. Now, where is that at? That's probably someplace out where there's like 5,000 people that live there, and you can just drive cool. But Raul, Raurel, I appreciate you, man, saying all this stuff with not been a TLDR. But the problem is that, and for big cities like LA with lots of people in it, you have to drive safely for yourself, but you also got to drive for the other person. And so what you do is you put a cushion behind you and the cushion in back of you and on the sides. But people are in a hurry to get someplace, and they're going to get in front of you. And no matter how slow you drive, actually, if you drive slower, that's going to make people get in front of you. Then you're constantly slowing yourself down, and it just doesn't work. Now, I'm curious to know what Mike and Lewis think about this this whole thing here. I'd love to hear y'all's.
So quickly, I just got to throw out. I googled
prove to me
it.
that this works.
I googled it, and apparently it's a part of LA. I don't know that that's true. It might be a different South Bay, but I just googled it. Apparently, it's part of LA. So he's an LA cat like you potentially. But I'm just gonna say,
not with a perfect score.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
There's a great tip. Honestly, he gave a great tip. And the tip is, if you're on autopilot, it's not gonna ding you. And in your example of somebody cutting in front, what he basically said was double tap that stalk real quick. If you turn it on to FSD or into an autopilot right as it's about to happen, it won't ding you.
I don't agree. I do not agree.
I'm just saying that again, I can't speak from experience. This is what the post says.
So,
I'm looking forward to actually, like, what I appreciate from this post is there's a lot of detailed info of his impressions of where things happen and how it works.
Yep.
Now, do we know that that's confirmed, right? Does he, can't say that if he's an insider actually knows those things for sure. But I'm very curious to see what happens with the scores, when I get mine. I'll certainly try some of these tips. Maybe they'll work, maybe they won't. But
Louis,
again, I don't live in LA. I live in Austin. It's
Louis,
a very different.
You getting a Plaid Model S that goes 0 to 60 in like 0 nanoseconds.
I'm
There's
also
no
going to
way.
be taking it to a track, so there's no way I'm going to have a good safety score.
I'm telling you, brother. It's just not going to happen.
Circuit of the Americas here is a Formula One track, in the U.S., and they let you do racing with your own private vehicles, and I definitely have it on my list. So
like
I'll be doing that. So yeah, my safety score is going to be in the toilet, but.
Mike, tell us, Mike.
So I subscribe to the FSD on my road trip. Actually, I picked it up a month before my road trip and kind of got used to the whole idea. 1,500 miles through Arizona, and I'm telling you, some of the roads there is nothing. So it's hours and hours and hours of driving on FSD, and I still could only get an 88.
That's crazy
at best, and I'm firmly convinced it's the average speed, although posted at 75, is about 85. FSD tends to hang close to the back of cars, even when it's adjusted. And I still had issues with fan and braking on several places. And I'm willing to bet that the system doesn't distinguish my braking versus the car deciding to automatically brake.
I mean, again, if you read his posts, he does make some arguments that sound pretty plausible about how things could still, like forward collision warnings, right? It's doing how many per 1,000 miles. It only counts or follow distance, right? Say follow distance. It only counts if you're within a certain distance of a car. So like most of you could be like, oh, I was fine. I drove for hundreds of miles and no one was in front of me. And yet I have one scenario and suddenly I'm screwed. It's like, because it's not counting those hundreds of miles. It's only counting when a car is within
that's kind of a mistake then, isn't it?
2 car lengths in front of you. Well, everything seems to
poor
have
data.
Again, everything seems to
cherry-picking
have, specific windows of where it counts versus where it doesn't. So it's an interesting post. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for posting the info.
There's a member on the forums. His name is Alan Gold, and if I could high five him, I would. He says, "Wow, getting that score seems like a full-time job," and that's exactly what it is. If you gotta, let me press the stalk and do all this. Let me do all of that just to maintain a 99 score, whatever.
Yeah.
It's you're putting too much effort into driving, and now the fun of driving a Tesla goes out the window.
I would also argue that if you're putting that much work into trying to get a perfect score, you're a hazard.
But here's the thing, though.
Agree.
Whoa, but let's back up. The point is, you're trying to beta test software that if you don't do it and you're not paying attention, you could kill somebody. So I would argue the vast majority of people driving should not have the beta and should not be able to have a good safety score.
If I have beta software installed in my car and I have to pay more attention to the beta software than my driving, then the software shouldn't be there.
But you're not paying for the beta software. You're not supposed to be paying attention to the software. He's talking about how to get his score.
But his point is I need to do all this cool stuff to get the high score so I can keep the beta or even get into it.
Sure. I don't know. I think if you're expecting to just use the car and drive it normally, you're not really beta testing. You're not really beta testing.
That's real life. That's real life.
I'm gonna have JT chime in, but I'm gonna say this from Dan. Dan says, I'm in Canada, and have been keeping my score at 98.99 for 6 months, waiting for beta. Pretty frustrating at first, but got easy eventually. And I do think it's forced me to drive safer. Well, Dan, okay. You know what? So,
come on.
You know what?
Give him kudos.
You know,
for that.
Thanks for that wonderful comment, Dan.
Okay, Dan. All right. So, Dan, so you're in Canada. So I've never driven in Canada before.
Well, the Canadians are polite, so.
Yeah, I understand that.
This isn't LA.
But my point is, Dan wants the beta. He wants the FSD beta. I had it, Dan, and it's fantastic. It's really night and day. If you have Autopilot now, the beta is like, it's crazy good. So I work in Hollywood, and so I use it a lot in Hollywood, and it really is cool how it maneuvers there, because there's tourists that get out from the street, take a picture of the Hollywood sign, whatever, and they couldn't care less about cars around them. But it's really been good. So I hope you do get it. But that said, if you say it's making you a safer driver, maybe you can mention in the comment what has made you do to be safer, because I'm a safe driver. I used to drive fire trucks. I was a fireman for a while. I used to drive fire trucks, and I have a commercial B license, so I drive big production trucks in it sometimes. So I feel that I'm pretty safe and know what I'm looking at. But when I had FSD beta and when I was trying to get the score, if anything, I agree with Mike, it made me more timid, and it made me second guess myself. So now I'm losing focus around me, and I'm trying to make sure, look at the speed. Let me ease off the brake, and more so than worrying about my around me. So it kind of, I felt like I was kind of losing myself.
Much like JT, I just want to drive. I want to drive. I want to enjoy it. I don't have to play games with the software and second guess myself and focus too much on what I'm doing other than the fact I'm enjoying the car. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, if you like taking G-forces, you're not going to get a good safety score, right? Like, that's really a lot of it, is measuring G's on cornering and honestly, on deceleration.
I drive my Tesla a lot better than I drove my Audi.
Bro, hey, I get at a stoplight, and I put my foot in the tank, and boy, you talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
I always do that. Anyway, JT, chime in on us, because we got to wrap it up. But JT, what's your thoughts about the beta?
Join the party.
Stuff?
Yeah. So my car doesn't even have backup sensors. I have a backup camera, and that's it. It doesn't beep at me or anything. I love it. I love it. So I know I'd probably be super frustrated with the safety score. I find when I'm driving with ADAS systems, I find most of my time I'm trying to think about what it's going to do next. And sometimes it doesn't do it. I get very frustrated very quickly, which is why I don't like those systems. And a safety score that tells me what I did wasn't safe, I'd get infinitely frustrated with. Like, well, you don't even know. I know better than you. You're just some stupid computer, right? You don't know, right? And sometimes I would be wrong for sure. But the other thing is, like, I have a motorcycle license. I took, when I moved to California, I took the written motorcycle test to get it moved over, and they're like, "Oh, what's the safest way to go through this intersection?" And I'm like, "Oh, go to the center line." And they're like, "No, you need to go to the right." I'm like, "No, not going to the right." And it's not that going to the right or the left is safer, right? I know why they wanted me to go to the right, but in my experience is I'd have less, I'd have more ability to be seen and avoid a hard incident.
Right.
If I did something that maybe wasn't it might have had a worse outcome if there was a conflict, but I think you'd have less chance of avoiding a conflict. Or I'd be able to avoid a conflict like it's a written paper. Are there oncoming traffic? That makes a big difference, right? If there's a heavy steady oncoming traffic, I'm not going to go to the center line. But if it's empty, I'm going to go to the center line because I have a bail point, right? So I think a lot of it is it's a written test for real world experience, and it's never going to be dead on, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think a post like that, I haven't read it. I skimmed it. But it's because I don't really care. But I think that if you understand what it's trying and how it's trying to grade you, you probably have a very good chance of drastically increasing your score, probably pretty easily.
You can game the system
too much, right? You can game the system. You know what's going to get you that extra point or two, or what's not going to get you drop 10 points.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And the other thing is, I used to drive triple digits everywhere, and now I drive the speed limit and get passed by everyone. And
yeah, I can't.
It's not hard to do. If you do it for a month or two, you can do it.
No way.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
When you're driving a Model 3 Performance, Model 3, you cannot drive.
You hate yourself for a month, but you get used to it. It's not that bad.
I can't do it. I can't. That's why I'll never have. Well, I can't say never. That's why it'd be difficult for me to do it because the car is way too much fun. There's too much. It's just too much. It's just too much. So anyway, it's been fantastic, JT, talking to you, man.
Yep.
Hopefully you can come back in the future if some other things happen, and we might want to get your expert opinion on it. So maybe you'll allow us to bring you back again. Lewis and Mike, what can I say? I love you guys. Y'all got it going on. If it wasn't for y'all, it would be no me. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's up.
I think it's the other way around, Mark.
No.
Yeah.
No. We got to get a shout out to our cast behind the scene, Doug and Danny, Adam, all those cast, James. You guys don't see those people, but they really make all this thing work. So we thank you guys.
Heart and soul.
They are. So it's all about them for helping us out here. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up for us for episode 11. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We want to hear your questions, your comments you may have. Please share them with us in the podcast section on TeslaMotorsClub.com or in the YouTube comments. If you would like to support this podcast, please consider becoming a supporting member on the TMC website. And also, if you want to follow us on social media to see what we're talking about, to see when Lewis finally gets his plaid, hey, you can the links are down in the description. So for myself, Mark, Mike, Lewis, and JT, El Supreme, we thank you guys for coming out, and thank you everyone at home listening to us and streaming us and watching us on a beautiful Saturday before Memorial Day. So we'll see you guys next time, episode 12. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.